Tonight on The Wrap, Keir Starmer continues to insist he isn't quitting and has called in a former PM to help. The Prime Minister's brought in Gordon Brown as a special advisor to try to steady the ship. But now a former Labour minister is threatening to launch a bid to replace Keir Starmer. Also tonight, the virus-stricken ship, the MV Hondius, nears the Canary Islands and is set to dock at Tenerife tomorrow. British passengers will be taken into isolation at Arrow Park Hospital in Merseyside once they've been repatriated. Russia holds a smaller-than-normal Victory Day military parade after the event was scaled back due to fears of a Ukrainian drone attack. And in sport, it's all still to play for in the Premier League title race after Manchester City ease past Brentford. Discussing the day's stories with me are the journalists Ava Santina-Evans and Christian Calgi. Plus, a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's papers, including Nigel Farage saying Reform is now the true party of the working people after winning more than 1,400 council seats. Good evening, Matt Barbette here with you for the next couple of hours. Now, the Prime Minister continues to insist he will not walk away and plunge the country into chaos, he says, after Labour's terrible showing in elections across the UK. Keir Starmer says the right thing to do is to rebuild and move forward, but the devastating results of this evening led to ex-Labour Minister Catherine West threatening to trigger a leadership contest if the Cabinet doesn't seek to remove the PM. In Wales, Labour lost control of the Senedd for the first time ever, and in Scotland, the party is currently tied with Reform in second place. Earlier today, the current PM enlisted the help of a former one in the form of Gordon Brown, as well as Baroness Harriet Harman. They'll both be advisors. I've got my own seasoned advisors here with me, and Ava and Christian. What are your thoughts? Ava first.
Well, I think this is a ploy to get the Brownites on side with Starmer. This is a ploy to oust any Andy Burnham supporter, but I can't see it working.
Christian?
It's just ludicrous. I mean, we're told he's going to be facing the future, he's going to be focusing on young people and, you know, energising government, and he's just constantly looking to the past, and I think it's just a symbol that he doesn't have any thoughts or clue about what he's doing, and he's just trying to ape what the last Labour government did slightly more successfully.
There you go, neither of them holding back. Let's hear from our political correspondent, Ali Fortescue. Here's her report this evening.
It was a day that started here. On Downing Street, Labour's past. Gordon Brown back for the first time in 16 years as the Prime Minister's new special envoy on global finance. And it wasn't just the former PM, a former deputy leader too, Harriet Harman, back in as advisor on women and girls. Starmer bulking his top team, trying to survive a brutal set of local elections. It wasn't enough, though, to stop his first challenger. Catherine West, the North London MP, says, I'm putting people on notice. If I don't hear by Monday morning of some leadership hopefuls, I'll be asking everybody in the Parliamentary Labour Party to put a name against my name. I need 80 names because we need to get this ball rolling. More than 20 Labour MPs have now said they want the PM gone.
I think we're in a very, very perilous situation where even if the scenario can change in the Labour Party, I'm not sure it's enough for us to actually go ahead in the next general election. However, it is true still that there needs to be a radical change and shift in terms of the leadership of the Labour Party. We have to start somewhere.
And it is hard to overstate just how bad it was. Nowhere safe now for Labour, from Wales lost for the first time to more disappointment in Scotland, the North West, North East, so-called Red Wall, cabinet territory crumbling to Reform. And in London, losses to the Greens, among others.
We made unnecessary mistakes, one of which was that we rightly, in my view, levelled with the public about the challenges that we face as a country, both on the finances and internationally.
The political map redrawn, a new era of multi-party politics.
James, you know Keir Starmer well. What do you think is going through his head right now?
I think the Prime Minister will be absolutely determined to continue in the job. He will believe he is the right person, particularly with everything that's going on in international affairs, to lead this country and lead his party.
We've seen Gordon Brown going into number 10, Harriet Harman. What do you make of that strategy? Is that something you would have thought was a good idea?
there is bafflement that when the public are crying out for change and acceleration in the pace of change, they're seeing two figures who were in government 3 decades ago brought back.
There are those that want the Prime Minister gone, but the bulk of people I speak to, we've heard publicly from the likes of Louise Hay, the former Cabinet Secretary, union bosses, what they want is change if this Prime Minister is the man to lead the party into the next election. But the trouble is, change means something different to different people. How is the Prime Minister going to navigate the many difficult decisions ahead on things like immigration, rising energy bills, tricky economic choices? How is he going to please everyone? That is going to be a near impossible task.
The Cabinet broadly have rallied, but there is no knowing what happens now, what a backbench challenge could spark. A minister tells me the party must look to the future, not just the past. Expectations on the PM now to deliver that future and save his own couldn't be higher. Ali Fortescue, Sky News, Westminster.
Ali is here. We'll have a word in a second. Before we do, we've had a statement from Catherine West, that Labour MP, former junior minister, who wants to challenge Keir Starmer's leadership. That's if the Cabinet don't do it first over the weekend. Let me just process some of it for you. His approach is not cutting through, she says. The results over the past 48 hours are nothing short of disastrous. Unless things change, we risk Nigel Farage becoming Prime Minister. Also, interestingly, she says Keir has demonstrated significant leadership on the world stage and is well placed to represent the UK's national interest and maybe continue in an international role in the future. That's the consolation prize, Catherine West thinks. Ali, is she going to achieve her aim? She says she's got some support for this, but she needs a whole lot more.
Yeah, I mean, there are MPs that think she does have enough support. She needs 80 MPs out of around 400 Labour MPs. I'm not clear that she does have that number. I think a lot of MPs are going to be privately aren't happy. They're going to be watching what the Prime Minister says on Monday, and they're going to be making their mind up based on that. And look, I think Monday is a massive day. We've got a speech from Keir Starmer. He's going to need to deliver one hell of a speech. I mean, you know, has he got the kind of rhetorical flair to do that? That might not be what he's known for. His allies are pointing to the speech he made after that Hartlepool by-election. You might remember 2021 when he started talking about his dad being a tool maker.
He's a tool maker?
Yes, did you know?
No idea. I had no idea.
But that was seen as a speech that kind of brought everyone back in, a reset moment. And actually, the one he did at conference this year in another tricky moment. But has he got enough left in the tank to please everyone? And, you know, a minister I was talking to was saying they want policy. Is he going to have the policy that's going to please all these different factions? We're hearing, I mean, a few briefings in the papers, hearing a lot about Europe. Is that a big direction we're going to see in the next week? It's going to be really difficult.
Yes, it is. But he's digging in. What has been the response amongst the people you've been talking to about bringing Gordon Brown officially back into the fold?
Well, I'm glad you asked, actually, because I have had quite a lot of responses. And I have to say, it's been lukewarm, I would say, and that's putting it lightly. One MP saying, not really a game changer. This is someone that's actually really loyal normally. Someone else saying, relying on a bunch of has-beens is perhaps not the best strategy, saying that Gordon Brown is no longer a spring chicken. I think that's a bit harsh, actually. Another person saying it's like moving deck chairs. So, yeah, broadly, the response that I've had via WhatsApp from Labour MPs has not been particularly positive. One minister saying they need to look forwards, not just backwards. But I think, you know, this is just part of his plan.
Yeah.
So I think we should maybe wait and see what else.
So less Gordon Brown and more Gordon Beige, perhaps, if it's a lukewarm response. Ava, what do you think of it?
Well, so it's interesting. I spoke to a minister this afternoon as well about Gordon Brown, and what they had said was it's all very well and good bringing him back into the fold, but if you're not going to enact Brown policies, then there's no point in him being there. He's just a moniker who's going to sit on the fireplace, essentially. And they were pointing towards his multi-banks, and they were saying, you know, this is a former Prime Minister who really cares about child poverty, who really cares about the sort of policies that perhaps Keir Starmer hasn't really been focusing on. So if you're going to have him in there, almost like a James Timpson-esque figure, which was the Prisons Minister, who is someone who really believes in rehabilitation, but you're not actually going to use him, then there's no point in having him at all.
Christian, what do you think? Because the other thing about Gordon Brown is he did lose an election himself.
Yeah, I saw a post by a pollster earlier who was saying that Westminster, Gordon Brown, like the disconnect between how he's perceived in Westminster and how the general public still see him is enormous. The general public still remember him for, overseeing, being in government when the financial crash happened.
But he saved us.
He saved the world. According to himself. And he sold the gold, which obviously, well before my time, but apparently it still has enormous
But so did Nixon.
anger.
No one else talks about
That was definitely before all of our time.
I don't know why Nixon's
gold
selling policy is not cutting through on the doorstep. So I don't think it's going to change anything with voters. And I think Downing Street will be pretty disappointed at the response from Labour MPs. I think they were sort of thinking this would be an easy win, bit of a dead cat to throw on the table on a day which otherwise would have just been completely dominated by the rising number of MPs calling on him to set a timetable for his resignation. So that hasn't worked. But, if we're relying on a speech, he may as well resign now. I mean, he's one of the least charismatic people I've ever seen. And the other thing is, policy. You want to talk about policy? It's all locked down, right? The King's speech is basically all set now. We know there's no money. So Gordon Brown is one of the people pushing to sort of change debt rules to increase defence spending. Well, fine, let's try and hit defence spending, but there's not going to be anything left for any of Labour MPs' other priorities. So he's in a corner and he's not going to get out of it.
You say a lot's riding on this speech on Monday. You don't think he's going to deliver it. When people were responding to his speech to the Parliamentary Labour Party, when the Mandelson scandal really kicked off, they seemed to be moved by what he said. He does have it in him, doesn't he, to deliver something on Monday that's going to, stir people into action potentially.
Yeah, people often say that actually in closer quarters, Starmer does better, and where in front of the PLPs, sometimes that's when people are happier with him. I'm not sure. I don't know the context exactly what this speech is going to look like, where exactly it's going to be. But is him standing at a podium talking down the barrel to a camera? What could he possibly say that will rouse everyone, that will please those different factions? One of the criticisms has been that there are too many Blairites around him, and do we need to see more of the soft left? We thought there might be a reshuffle. I get the sense that's probably not on the cards now.
Yeah.
So is he going to please that faction as well? It's difficult. And he's talking, I think, in The Observer about going on for 10 years. So, yeah, he's obviously going to fight this. And, yeah, Caroline West, I mean, what's going to happen with that? That's really interesting. I'm kind of interested. I mean, I'm presenting, but what do you guys think is going to happen with that? Because we were talking about it in the newsroom, and we really don't know. Is this, the Jenga, the little piece of the puzzle that unravels the whole thing? I don't know. Caroline sounds. I mean, many of us hadn't even heard of her a few hours ago.
Well, I think, as I understand it, I believe that people close to Andy Burnham have sort of slightly asked her to stand down because he's not ready to launch a challenge.
Yeah.
And according to the New Statesman tonight, there's also, she didn't quite understand the rules of how to launch that leadership bid, so perhaps there's been a bit of confusion there. But yeah, I mean, the true heir, as I think many of the backbench MPs see it, is Andy Burnham, and he obviously doesn't have a seat. There's not anywhere to seat him at this time, so they're not quite ready for the challenge. But how long can this go on for is the real question.
Well, 100%. And if we're waiting for... You look at the local election results, the idea that he can stand anywhere and be guaranteed to get in. And just this morning on Sky, we had the Environment Secretary say, well, it's very likely we then lose the Manchester mayoralty.
Yeah.
So I don't see how actually they can. I don't see the route back.
But who put those rules in? Do you know that this is the most bizarre thing? The not being able to stand for the Manchester mayor and also be an MP. Who put those rules in? It was Keir Starmer when he changed the rules of the NEC. So they've sort of bitten their own tail off here, haven't they? Really?
But I mean, I also I have a lot in common with Catherine West insofar as I also don't have a clue about the Labour Party leadership rules. But what I did see earlier was her forcing this contest will force the Labour Party to open up, nominations from all people. And I think it will be very, very difficult for all of these people that have spent months briefing and upping their chances and having coffees and drinks with MPs, Wes Streeting, Angela Rayner, and the rest of them, to stare that opportunity down and go, no, I'm not ready to move. I think something in the next 48 hours is going to have to shift as a result of, to be fair, Catherine West.
What has happened in the last 48 hours is monumental in terms of a split into 5, maybe 7 parties across the UK. And what strikes me listening to you speak is we're talking about Blairites and Brownites. The shadow of 16 years ago is looming large over the current crop in a similar way to Thatcher's shadow looming large over the Conservatives. They need to move.
And all of us. Still now.
That's a discussion for another time. But don't Labour really need to move on from looking back to the New Labour era?
Well, I think that would be a more existential question about the sort of the struggle to find what the Labour Party really means and what is it to be a Labour Party member. And I think that Brown is probably the closest coagulation of what Labour both wants to be in the present and actually still honouring its past. So that's probably why they hark back to it. But, you know, when you think it's the Workers' Party, and we're in a country now that has been deindustrialised, so we don't have workers, we have dilapidated trade unions, so the base of the party has totally fallen apart. So at the top, you're sort of grappling for an idea about politics rather than actually having a proper oomph or oust with it.
Good thought to talk about Wales then, because in Wales, Plaid Cymru is now celebrating after becoming the biggest party when Labour was, well, forever, really. First Minister Eluned Morgan lost her seat and resigned as the leader of Welsh Labour after Plaid made huge gains during the Senedd elections. Our correspondent Dan Whitehead has more.
It is a town built on an industrial past. From mining to steel, Ebbw Vale has long been at the centre of Labour's history. Nye Bevin, the Welsh founding father of the NHS, was the party's MP here for more than 30 years. Now it is represented by Plaid and Reform. A moment to reflect on for sisters Eileen and Kathleen, who lived here all their lives.
I've been Labour all my life, but since all this has been on, and they've done nothing for Ebbw Vale.
That is sad in one way, but there's hope now, Plaid Cymru, to give us what we've put them in for.
Yes.
You know, to fight for Wales.
Reform voter David was a steelworker here for more than 20 years.
Well, when the steelworks was here, fully functional, we had everything in Ebbw Vale. And now, what have we got now? Takeaways.
You voted for Reform?
Yeah, I did.
So you, rather than Plaid, rather than any of the other parties, what was it about them that you think that they can solve in Wales?
I don't know what it was. It was Starmer sort of shoved us our way, wasn't it?
For many, it is that disillusionment that has brought Welsh Labour to this catastrophic fall. The death of Labour in Wales, in communities like this, is as much about identity as it is the political issues that have been fought over. The heritage of the party, the unions, for decades has been intrinsically linked into every family, every job, every life. That identity has gone, and with it, Labour. For one Welsh politician who lost his seat, the blame lies at number 10.
I can't express to you, I haven't got a vocabulary to express to you just how unpopular Keir Starmer is in my former constituency and amongst Labour voters. If you remember the days when you had towering Labour majorities right through the valleys of South Wales, you know, you could guarantee that you go into any valley of South Wales, you'd have a chapel, a male voice choir and a 20,000 Labour majority. Today, you haven't even got a Labour member in some of these places.
Outside the Senedd, the Welsh voice was strong to welcome the man set to become the new First Minister.
In all parts of Wales, I know how many people are celebrating this momentous piece of Welsh history. No UK government, no UK Prime Minister, now or in the future, can cast Wales aside or turn a blind eye to our needs and our aspirations as a nation.
He now has a huge task ahead of him. This is a new chapter for Wales, a rebirth for a nation desperate for change. Dan Whitehead, Sky News, in Ebbw Vale.
Well, let's focus on Wales. And I have to disclose, it turns out I went to school with the now leader of Welsh Labour, who is Ken Skates, who was previously a minister there. I think narrowly got re-elected, one of the handful of Labour members of the Senedd who are back in there. And he was in my year at school. His phone went off today, though, so he didn't want to talk to us on air about it. But he's got his work cut out, hasn't he?
He's got his work cut out just to get noticed in Wales. It's very difficult, although the one redeeming thing for Labour is even though they're clearly really, really hurting and bruised from all this, Plaid are going to need them to do anything if they want to form a functioning government. So they have still bargaining power in Cardiff. But, you know, Wales was so obviously lost. It was just the longest sort of death row process for Welsh Labour. And the one thing I would say actually slightly in Keir Starmer's favour, weirdly, is that this is not entirely his fault. Welsh Labour have been terrible across the board, whether it's education, whether it's healthcare, whether it's failing to stop the rise of the independence movement, or faffing about increasing the number of seats in the Senate against basically, the vast majority of voters' wishes. They have not been used their time in power productively. So I completely, sympathise with voters wanting a change. I just happen to think that Plaid are probably not going to be much better, unfortunately.
And also Labour got through First Ministers pretty rapidly, didn't they? Mark Drakeford and Vaughan Gething was there and gone, and Elena Morgan wasn't in the role for that long. And obviously, as we know, and we were talking about last night, lost her own seat, hence resigning the leadership. But the rise of Plaid, is it just a response to Labour? Are Plaid doing what the Greens have perhaps been doing in other places, where they're taking from the left of the Labour Party?
I mean, potentially. I think there's also a lot of to counter you there, Calgie, sorry, but there's a lot of anger towards Keir Starmer and the UK central government because of Tata Steel in Port Talbot, because that was sort of the last bastion of industry that was in Wales. You know, over the last decade or so, there have been many huge companies that have left Wales, like LG. I think Hoover was another company that had left. And this was like their one opportunity to see that Labour actually was looking out for the Welsh people, and they could have saved that from that disastrous deal that the Conservatives had made with Tata Steel to withdraw that coal blast furnace, and they ended up just sort of following through with it. So I think it was more of an anger. I think it was really a sort of a two fingers to Keir Starmer. You know, we've had you for 100 years, and the minute you get into government in England, you don't actually end up looking out for us in Wales. But what's interesting about the microcosm that this will show is that Labour have been veering to the right to try and match reform for quite some time now. Wales now seems like an outlier because you've actually had this left-wing party who have scooped up more seats than Reform have. So I don't know what's going to happen with Labour strategists looking at this. It's probably going to be very puzzling for them because they've got to rip up the blueprints.
Well, the pressure on the Prime Minister features on the front of the Mail, Christian's paper, with the headline, "If Starmer had a plot, he's lost it." We'll have a full rundown of what's in the rest of tomorrow's papers at 10:30. Next, though, British nationals on the hantavirus-stricken cruise ship will be sent to Arrow Park Hospital, which is on the Wirral, and asked to isolate for 45 days when they return home. 22 Brits are on the ship, making its way to the Canary Islands. Sky's Sadia Chowdhury reports from Tenerife.
Enormous preparation for somewhat unwelcomed visitors. Port Granadilla is readying for the arrival of the virus-stricken MV Hondius. It's due in the early hours of Sunday morning, now ahead of schedule.
The preparations are in full swing here at the port in anticipation of the ship's arrival. Once the passengers disembark, it has to be really quick. Get them onto buses and straight to the airport.
It's a 10-minute journey without traffic lights or traffic jams. Expect that same speed once at the airport, where cruise ship passengers should skip passport control and head straight to their aircraft. The World Health Organization boss has arrived, and with this message: "I know you are worried. I know that when you hear the word outbreak and watch a ship sail towards your shores, memories surface that none of us have fully put to rest. The pain of 2020 is still real, and I do not dismiss it for a single moment. But I need you to hear me clearly. This is not another COVID."
You keep saying it's nothing like COVID, but isn't your presence here suggesting otherwise? Seeing your face on media briefings every day.
It doesn't show that it's because people are concerned, so I have to be with them, while knowing full well that the risk is very low. But when people are concerned, then I have to take it seriously, and I have to be with them to repeat the same message and to support so the operation is successful.
And is there a risk that in 45 days' time, both of you are going to regret not keeping this on the ship, but instead allowing passengers to come onto Spanish soil and then go all over the world and expect themselves to self-isolate? Isn't there a risk you'll regret this?
As we have said again, based on the assessment, what you're saying is not going to happen.
Here is where the cruise passengers' Spanish adventure is set to end. This, the country that stepped up when few others were willing. Sadia Chowdhury, Sky News in the Canary Islands.
Well, it's pretty concerning, this, and it's been pretty upsetting for the people aboard that ship, Christian, because let's not forget, people have lost their lives, and the rest of them are probably wondering what on earth is happening as they sort of drift around waiting to dock.
Oh, it's horrific, unimaginable, and I feel so sorry for them that, you know, the answer isn't necessarily just dock and get them off the ship, because there's such a worrying public health element to this, and I think we're all just sort of completely traumatised by COVID that we're automatically considering worst case scenarios there, which we've got to avoid. And there's so much science up in the air about the how it's, you know, the transmission and how that's actually happening that we don't really fully understand yet, because we're still waiting on it to dock and they can do a sweep of the ship. But, you know, goodness me, I'm desperate for them to get off and get the medical attention that they need. And I just hope that everyone across the board, from the ship to the medical professionals actually getting them off, to then everyone else involved, you know, I just pray that everyone is as safe as possible during that whole process.
Yeah, very quickly. I mean, that's the concern, is it? It reminds us of 5 years ago. I think the World Health Organization is saying it is not that. There has to be really close contact for it to pass between humans. But nevertheless, the fact that we're all looking at this suggests, and it is being reported across the world, of course, suggests how people have got that in their minds.
Yeah, it reminds you of the Princess Diamond. That was the name of the cruise ship, wasn't it, where the corona outbreak first took off. But, I mean, this is one in a series of many of cruise ship outbreaks. You know, the number of times you hear people with norovirus, and it's completely uncontrollable in that environment. I mean, I just feel sorry for everyone who was stuck on that ship knowing that someone had lost their life and they were stuck in their cabins. It must have been an awful experience. Yeah, and continues to be for many of them. Coming up next on The Wrap, we're going to take a first look at what's making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News. People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
Welcome back. Matt here with Ava and Christian. Let's have a look at what's making the front pages of tomorrow's papers. And in the Mirror, the embattled Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has pledged to slash energy bills in an attempt to turn around Labour's fortunes after his local election nightmare. That's the exclusive on their front page. The Mail leads on claims Andy Burnham is moving closer to Downing Street after one of the Prime Minister's own senior MPs said he's losing the plot because of the threat to his leadership. Meanwhile, a former Labour minister has given an ultimatum to the Cabinet, as we've been discussing, to challenge the PM's leadership on Monday, or she'll do it herself. That's on the front of the Telegraph. The backbench rebellion is also on the front page of The Times, with Starmer summoning Gordon Brown in a dramatic return to the government. The Star has Keir Starmer being mocked for trying to save his leadership by bringing in the former Prime Minister Gordon Brown. Nigel Farage is boasting on the front of the Express that Reform UK has supplanted Labour as the party of working people. The Observer has this picture of Christopher Harborne, if you don't recognise him, the crypto billionaire who lives in Thailand, who gave £5 million to Nigel Farage and plenty more to Reform. And on the front of the People, celebrities and campaigners have united in anger as the government cancels plans to ban animal trophy killings. So let's have a closer look at what is in the papers. Let's start, Ava, with the Telegraph. The stalking horse plot to oust Starmer is, well, that's their main headline. A small picture there of Catherine West, whose statement we read out just a few moments ago.
Yes, this is the bombshell revelation that Sir Keir Starmer could be facing a leadership challenge from a former minister who is currently a backbencher, who not many people had heard of until today, when she made the rallying call to oust the Prime Minister. And I think it was a surprise for a number of Labour backbenchers, because firstly, they didn't expect the challenge to come from Catherine West, but also that no one else had ignited the challenge, you know, that this hadn't been led from the front by someone, say, like Wes Streeting, or it hadn't been led by Angela Rayner, not that I think that she would lead the challenge, but, you know, it hadn't been led by one of these big Labour beasts. It had actually come from a backbencher who said she was simply concerned around the Prime Minister and didn't believe that he had the capabilities to lead them into the next election.
But others think maybe she's been put up to this by, well, who?
Well, you say that, but, you know, I did a ring round earlier and I was trying to figure out where on earth this come from. Maybe you know more, Calgie, but they'd all said to me, like, well, it wasn't us. But... Yeah,
I mean, as far as I'm aware, I think it's wrong to describe her as a stalking horse, because I'm also unaware that any of the main leadership contenders have anything to do with this. Also, I just think the fact that she launched with 10 MPs maybe suggests that it is a completely, you know, independent thing. I think maybe if Rayner or Wes or someone else were trying to use her, should have launched with a greater number to actually get the ball rolling a bit better. So I do believe that she's on her own. And I think absolute credit to her, because I, for one, am really sick and tired of all these cabinet ministers spending weeks privately briefing against the Prime Minister and talking up their leadership hopes and just refusing to do anything about it. I think it's cowardly, and I think fair play on Catherine West for actually deciding that she wants a change of leader, going public with that call, and then doing something about it. And I think actually we need to get to a point where if the cabinet ministers that keep wanting to be talked of as potential future prime ministers are not putting their hat into the ring as a result of this, then actually they should lose the right to be spoken about as future prime ministers, because it really feels like now or never, and they keep waiting for this perfect opportunity. Well, it's not going to come. And Labour need to copy the Tories and get a bit better at regicide, actually.
Can I just add to that as well? Because
can.
I do think it seems slightly hubristic as well for the Prime Minister today to sort of attempt to come out swinging after these disastrous local election results, you know, bringing in Gordon Brown, bringing in Harriet Harman and sort of standing outside Downing Street with Rachel Reeves as if everything's perfectly fine when his entire leadership is on fire. You know, one of the more striking statements I thought came from the Mayor of London. So Sadiq Khan had put out yesterday, his spokesperson had said that, you know, to paraphrase, essentially, I'm really sorry to everyone who went out and campaigned for us, but we've not been focusing on the right things. People don't feel like there's any speed of change. People are upset with some of the decisions that Keir Starmer has been making. He didn't name him, but he said leadership. You know, that to me, when you've got your Mayor of London, who is sort of your number two, really, when it comes to in terms of power dynamics in the country, you know, briefing against you in this way publicly, to sort of put on this rather hubristic face in front of number 10, I just think it doesn't come off very well. And I think the public have a real salty taste in their mouth.
Well, there have been rumours of Sadiq trying to get back into Parliament, haven't there?
There have, whether they've emanated from City Hall.
Who knows?
I really got the feeling he was going to go for a fourth term, you know? I really got that sort of sense.
Let's not get distracted by that. I mean, we started with the Sunday Telegraph talking about plots, and the Mail, your paper, Christian, or certainly your colleagues, the Mail on Sunday says Starmer's lost the plot, if he ever had one. Tell us about this zombie PM thing they're talking about.
Well, you know, it was just back to that the perennial issue of in office but not in power. The political capital has all but drained away, which is why earlier just a while ago we sort of dismissed out of hand any chance of a reshuffle. I think it's obviously what we saw with Gordon Brown today was weirdly Keir Starmer trying to ape Rishi Sunak, you know, brought back David Cameron as Foreign Secretary, but it was in a complete non-job because he doesn't have the authority or the power to even, you know, if you can't even sack people like Liz Kendall and Peter Kyle from the cabinet, then what hope do you have, really? So that's
I thought you'd like Liz Kendall, you know.
I do quite like Liz Kendall. But, you know, that's a damning indictment on her, if anything. My favourite thing about the Mail splash is as I was saying earlier, to describe Catherine West as a stalking horse is a bit wrong because she doesn't seem to be doing this on behalf of any of the other candidates. She's been dubbed a stalking donkey by one Labour source to more accurately describe her strategy.
Bit rude. Let's turn our attention to Sunday Express, Ava, because they're taking a different tack on all the results yesterday, and it is, from the point of view of Nigel Farage, the best is yet to come. Victoria's Farage says Reform is now the true party of the working people. Is it?
Well, so, yes, Farage picked up more seats than Labour lost. Well, just about even kilter, which is astonishing, considering the party is... Well, this is sort of the real first major election that they've actually faced as a party where they've stood up candidates everywhere. But, I mean, this should be very worrying, I think, in Labour HQ. Probably more so, actually, in Conservative HQ because they've really peeled off votes towards them. But, you know, one big thing that I think is being missed is the astonishing gains that the Green Party have made during these local elections, you know, gaining over 500 seats under a leader, Zach Polansky, who's only been in post for around 7 months.
Yeah.
You know, Nigel Farage has been on television every single day for the last decade. No one even knew who Zach Polansky was 3 months ago. So to have made those gains is actually rather astonishing, and I would argue a bit more of a feat than Reform.
Is it really the true party of the working people? Because when it comes to their MPs, they're not particularly representative of working people, Lee Anderson excluded.
Well, there's a difference. I think a party is better defined by the people who vote for it than the people at the top, because otherwise you start getting into this whole route of they've been duped. It starts feeling a bit like we're sort of accusing people of voting for the wrong party, and I think voters are intelligent enough to know what they want. I think what happened with Reform, I completely agree about the Greens, but I think there's almost a risk that we go the wrong way with Reform, in that we just sort of normalise this, because it happened a lot. The last locals were really good, obviously, and the polls have been very good for Reform for 2 years now. There was a moment possibly on Friday morning where I started thinking, have reform actually underperformed a bit? The numbers didn't seem to be as high as some of the polls were suggesting in terms of councils. But now we've got all of it in, it really is top-end stuff. It's really good. Apart from, they fell slightly shorter than I think they were expecting in Wales, and I think even Malcolm Offord in Scotland has acknowledged that was a bit of a frustration, disappointment. I can't remember the word he used, but that was a bit, not as good as they were hoping for. But across the councils, really impressive, and it is just it does seem like a relentless march. And you're right about the Tories. As much as they did a very good job of spinning on Friday morning in terms of Westminster and Wandsworth, they have just become a bit of a rump in London. And yet, weirdly, very, very united behind Kemi Badenoch.
Yes, yeah.
Can I answer your question, which you earnestly put to both of us, about working people? I would just say this is the man, Nigel Farage, who supported Margaret Thatcher, and she was not the party for the working people. So it's almost laughable to me that reform could ever be that. It feels like Turkey's voting for Christmas, to be honest.
Thank you very much indeed. Next, Russia's Victory Day parade is known as a chance to flex the country's military muscle. But as our Moscow correspondent Ivor Bennett reports now, this year's event was scaled back out of fears of a Ukrainian drone attack, they say.
It's the day when Russia celebrates victory and remembers the Soviet Union's defeat of Nazi Germany. It's usually a parade of military might, but not this year. On Moscow's Red Square, there were no tanks, no missiles, only troops, because of fears of drone attacks from Ukraine. In the end, Vladimir Putin could rest easy after Kyiv agreed to a last-minute ceasefire. But the scaled-down parade shows how far his invasion has gone off-script. No mention of that from the Kremlin leader.
Великий подвиг поколения победителей вдохновляет.
The great feat of the victorious generation inspires the soldiers carrying out special military operations today. They are confronting an aggressive force, armed and supported by the entire NATO bloc, and yet our heroes march forward.
И несмотря на это, наши герои идут вперед.
Troops from the battlefield marched in the parade, alongside soldiers from North Korea who've joined Russia's war. But it's now in its 5th year, longer than the fight against the Nazis, and victory remains elusive.
This is as close as I can get to the parade because my accreditation for Red Square, which is at the end of this road, was suddenly cancelled at the last minute, just like most other members of the foreign media here, apparently because of this year's changed format. And I think it shows just how nervous the Kremlin has been around what is for them a marquee event.
Instead of a show of strength, it felt more like a display of weakness. Extra security, a sign of extra worries.
Yes, I would probably like to see the hardware, to have a look at it, but times dictate their own conditions, so we'll re-watch previous parades.
I believe that safety comes first. I think that everything done for safety is absolutely right, so it's not a shame.
The Kremlin is trying to convince Russians that victory will be theirs, as it was in 1945. But it feels like it's a message that's getting harder to sell. Ivor Bennett, Sky News, Moscow.
The interesting thing about this, Ava, is they say they scaled it back because of risk of a Ukrainian drone attack. But the idea of that succeeding a couple of years ago would have been unthinkable. But literally in the past week, we've seen a Ukrainian drone go straight into a luxury apartment building in Moscow and put a big hole in it. It's interesting how they've managed to rattle the might of Mother Russia with drones.
It certainly felt like they were rather rattled. You normally see the sort of pomp and ceremony around these displays. You normally see the big guns, the big machinery, and, if you're into that, I'm sure that really excites you.
It sounded like you were for a second.
I can't say it to me, I'm more of a train girl, but I'm sure it's exciting to someone. But that really wasn't on display today. There has been some suggestion that is because that equipment needs to be on the front line, because perhaps they are concerned, and also while we're looking over at Europe, perhaps, Trump hasn't been particularly particularly helpful in the Ukraine war effort, but we now are looking at this sort of coalition of the willing, and we're looking at the funding that is now being cooped or brought together by various EU countries and the UK and Canada. Actually, there is quite a display of might that perhaps Putin might find intimidating.
And they really limited journalists' access to this in a way that they hadn't done with Western journalists before.
Yeah, I think it really does show that Russia is struggling. And you're right, I think the reason that there weren't the missiles and tanks there that we usually see parading past is that they don't have them to spare. And to have Russia openly admit that drone attacks by Ukraine, however many, 3 years, are we into 3 years now into this war, is still not just possible, but something to be genuinely fearful of, is desperately humiliating. And I imagine that, I don't know, but I'd be very surprised if the Kremlin put that statement out in Russia, because they've, they can't afford to be losing internal support at this point. But that's what would happen if they knew the truth.
Thank you both for the time being. You are watching The Wrap. Coming up, how England's Red Roses edge closer to another Women's Six Nations Grand Slam.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling.
It's not his country, it's ours.
Sky News, the full story first, free wherever you get your news. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in.
Gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
There seems to be some sort of a shooting, what appears to be shots fired at the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
It was a jam-packed interview. I'll tell you what he told me, and I'll explain why you can't hear the call.
100 days in and back with the grassroots of this MAGA movement.
It feels a little bit like he's a king, not a president.
He is a king.
I've witnessed the remarkable passion for politics here, but the anger too. These immigration rates?
Unbelievable we've come to this.
I'm observing what you're doing.
This post of Trump, it's a big shift. It's very positive.
Have you seen what Donald Trump's been up to? In the Rose Garden, in the East Wing.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist. A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
A historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now? What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking...
Thank you so much.
...trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story? I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They will be all out to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
Let's get the latest now from Sky Sports News. Here's Roger.
James, can you do a big clap in front of your face? Perfect. OK, mate, in your own time.
One word to describe James Milner.
Legend.
Unique. Consistent.
Dedicated.
Intense.
Brilliant.
He just loves to win.
I think he's everything you'd want to be in a footballer.
The Premier League loves James Milner.
Hi James, congratulations on breaking the all-time Premier League appearance record and how hard it is to keep going. You've done phenomenal, so well done.
To be appreciated by your teammates and appreciate what you give, that's pretty special.
England's future looks healthy, and here at Leeds United's training ground, they reckon they're once again grooming tomorrow's World Cup stars.
The board now are realising that you've got to have your money in your academy, you've got to believe in it, because the spiralling costs of everything within the game, I think you've got to try and bring people through that you've blooded yourself.
Yeah, it was an amazing time being in the academy, and then you're seeing the likes of those guys come through. I remember Alan Smith scoring his first touch at Anfield. He was my hero. From being really young and going with my family, and as a Leeds fan, you know, it was a dream really being at the club and being in the academy of a team you supported.
James had the mentality that you would associate with an older, good professional.
Lucky enough to sign the old YTS back then at Leeds, and then we ended up sharing a room together. It was only Phils and Orsies, and then I think it was on the old PlayStation. We had a snooker game and we were obviously competitive and trying to get 147.
It was a training session basically, and this young lad got called in, and straight away you're all having a look at him, you know, what's he like, whose team's he going to be on. I would say 10 minutes into him coming over from, I think it might have been under 12s then, how old was he? He's only like 16, wasn't he? He did this one thing straight away, and everyone straight away went, oh, who's this lad here?
Young James Milner's only 16.
Didn't think I was going to get on, and to be fair, Terry gave me the nod to go on. Lee Bowyer passed me a ball with my back to goal, and I tried to pass it back and passed it to Paolo Di Canio, and he put it over the bar, thank God. And just remember Bo afterwards asking, did I have a bet on 4-all? I can't remember too much about being nervous playing against other Premier League players, because for me Leeds were an amazing team, and seeing Wayne Rooney doing what he was doing at that time, that obviously showed you again it was possible and someone else was doing it, and made you even more eager to go and train really well and take your chance when you got it on the pitch.
He's travelled a long way to get in the 6-yard box to finish that off, and I think that is typical of the type of player he is.
No, we're there to put the boots out. We're there to pick the drinks up, you know, go get the slips for the first team lads, and pick things up off the floor. And he got the shout that he was on the bench.
He was so strong in his own mind about what he wanted to achieve, what he did in the game. When he was playing games, he knew what his job was, and he got on with it.
Next thing you know, he's on the pitch and sitting Marcel Desailly on the floor.
Goodness me, he has done it again. James Milner's the name.
We were just obviously absolutely buzzing for him to score that and to be 16, and which was obviously huge.
It wasn't so long ago that the Leeds-born lad was strutting his stuff on his school playing fields. Now he's on an altogether bigger stage.
What I like about him is the awareness of other players, like Beckham.
They're young, gifted, and in a short space of time, James Milner and Wayne Rooney have seen themselves elevated to hero status.
When you talk about Wayne Rooney, you're talking about one of the best players that have ever played. But I put James right up there.
Pretty much blew up, you know, obviously in the papers, and people ringing the house, wanting to represent you, and I think people turned up at the local cricket club we used to go to all the time and asked where I lived, and people said we'd never heard of him and lied and things like that. I was in a school hall doing my GCSEs like 5 months before that, and all your mates go to watch Leeds, and then you're playing on the pitch and scoring goals in front of them.
He was dubbed the new Wayne Rooney. Now Leeds youngster James Milner finds himself.
Thank you, Roger. Let's take a look now at the weather.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
Tomorrow looks mostly fine, but next week is going to be rather changeable, turning cooler as well with the risk of some frosty nights. Most places will start dry in the morning, but England's south coast will see a bit of rain. It's going to be chilly in the north with a frost in parts of the countryside. Southern Britain will be quite cloudy overall, breezy through the morning with patchy rain in the far southeast. Elsewhere, mainly dry with plenty of sunshine, but northern Scotland's turning wet and windy. The odd shower will also affect the southeast of Scotland. It will be cooler than today for southern Britain, a bit warmer for most of it, but temperatures will be mainly below average.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
You're watching The Wrap. Coming up in a moment, Keir Starmer is still insisting he ain't quitting and has called in a former PM to help in the form of Gordon Brown. More on that in the next hour of The Wrap.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan. I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist...
My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
...is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more.
Well, let's kick off.
And make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs?
He's coming out! What more do you need?
Good evening. Coming up on The Wrap, Keir Starmer continues to insist he ain't quitting and has called in a former PM to help him. The Prime Minister's brought in Gordon Brown as a special advisor to try to steady the number 10 ship, but now a former Labour minister is threatening to launch a bid to replace Keir Starmer. Also tonight, the virus-stricken ship, the MV Hondius, nears the Canary Islands and is set to dock in Tenerife tomorrow. British passengers are going to be taken into isolation at Arrow Park Hospital on Merseyside once they've been repatriated. In sports, still all to play for in the Premier League title race after Man City ease past Brentford. Discussing today's stories with me are the journalists Ava Santina-Evans and Christian Calgi. Plus, a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's papers, including Nigel Farage saying Reform is now the true party of the working people after winning more than 1,400 council seats. Good evening, Matt here. Good to have you with us. It's just gone 11 o'clock and the Prime Minister continues to insist he's not going to walk away and plunge the country in chaos, he says, after Labour's frankly terrible showing in elections across the UK in the past couple of days. Keir Starmer says the right thing to do, he believes, is to rebuild and move forward. But the devastating results of this evening led to ex-Labour Minister Catherine West threatening to trigger a leadership contest if the Cabinet doesn't seek to remove the PM itself. In Wales, Labour lost control of the Senedd for the first time, and in Scotland, the party is currently tied with Reform in second place. Early today, the current PM enlisted the help of a former one in the form of Gordon Brown, as well as Baroness Harriet Harman. They'll both be advisers, and I've got two of my own right here in the form of Ava and Christian. Ava, what do you think about bringing in those two big beasts again?
It feels like a last-ditch attempt, doesn't it, to shore up the soft left of the party, bring in what might be remembered as a fan favourite if you are a Labour MP. Not quite sure what Harriet Harman's doing in that analogy, but, you know, I'm not really too sure how many Labour backbenchers this is going to win over, and I think inevitably there will be a leadership challenge, whether it's now or whether that's in 2 years' time.
Christian, is it going to work?
Do you know what? It's just the way I see it is that. Do you know Doctor Who's ratings are really bad, and they just keep bringing back David Tennant because he was a fan favourite, and to begin with, everyone's really excited, but now it just seems like a desperate gimmick. Keir Starmer has become Russell T Davies in that metaphor, and it's gone down not very well. I mean, there's been a couple of outrider MPs that I've seen who are delighted, but actually, if you look at this, then there's no substance to these jobs. They're purely advisory, and by all accounts, Harriet Harman was given pretty much the same job last year and has just been re-awarded it with a slightly different title now. So there's no substance behind the announcement. Really, what we're all waiting for is this, you know, make or break speech on Monday, which is now going to be largely overshadowed by Catherine West's leadership ultimatum deadline. And so that would have been a better thing. As I said earlier, this was a sort of dead cat strategy, as we say. You throw a dead cat on the table and hope it just distracts everyone from the other stuff that was being talked about.
Yeah.
But this dead cat doesn't seem to have been substantive enough to really refocus minds in the way Downing Street may have hoped.
I'm thinking your Doctor Who analogy. Who would the Daleks be? Reform?
Catherine West.
Catherine West. The Daleks. Here is our political correspondent, Ali Fortescue, with more on this now.
It was a day that started here, on Downing Street, Labour's past. Gordon Brown back for the first time in 16 years as the Prime Minister's new special envoy on global finance. And it wasn't just the former PM, a former deputy leader too, Harriet Harman, back in as advisor on women and girls. Starmer bulking his top team, trying to survive a brutal set of local elections. It wasn't enough, though, to stop his first challenger. Catherine West, the North London MP, says, "I'm putting people on notice. If I don't hear by Monday morning of some leadership hopefuls, I'll be asking everybody in the Parliamentary Labour Party to put a name against my name. I need 80 names because we need to get this ball rolling." More than 20 Labour MPs have now said they want the PM gone.
I think we're in a very, very perilous situation where even if the scenario can change in the Labour Party, I'm not sure it's enough for us to actually go ahead in the next general election. However, it is true still that there needs to be a radical change and shift in terms of the leadership of the Labour Party. We have to start somewhere.
And it is hard to overstate just how bad it was. Nowhere safe now for Labour, from Wales lost for the first time to more disappointment in Scotland, the northwest, northeast, so-called Red Wall, cabinet territory crumbling to reform. And in London, losses to the Greens, among others.
We made unnecessary mistakes, one of which was that we rightly, in my view, levelled with the public about the challenges that we face as a country, both on the finances and internationally.
The political map redrawn, a new era of multi-party politics.
James, you know Keir Starmer well. What do you think is going through his head right now?
I think the Prime Minister will be absolutely determined to continue in the job. He will believe he is the right person, particularly with everything that's going on in international affairs, to lead this country and lead his party.
We've seen Gordon Brown going into number 10, Harriet Harman. What do you make of that strategy? Is that something you would have thought was a good idea?
There is bafflement that when the public are crying out for change and acceleration in the pace of change, they're seeing two figures who were in government 3 decades ago brought back.
There are those that want the Prime Minister gone, but the bulk of people I speak to, and we've heard publicly from the likes of Louise Hay, the former Cabinet Secretary, union bosses, what they want is change if this Prime Minister is the man to lead the party into the next election. But the trouble is, change means something different to different people. How is a Prime Minister going to navigate the many difficult decisions ahead on things like immigration, rising energy bills, tricky economic choices? How is he going to please everyone? That is going to be a near impossible task.
The Cabinet broadly have rallied, but there is no knowing what happens now, what a backbench challenge could spark. A minister tells me the party must look to the future, not just the past. Expectations on the PM now to deliver that future and save his own couldn't be higher. Ali Fortescue, Sky News, Westminster.
Ali's here alongside Ava. Christian's with me as well. What has been the reaction to bringing Gordon Brown back into the fold?
I've actually been quite struck because I have to say it's been lukewarm, and that's to say the least. And my phone has been buzzing off the hook. I've had loads of messages about this. So one MP saying moving deck chairs, another saying not really a game changer. I should say these are not the so-called usual suspects. These are pretty loyal MPs. One saying we're relying on a bunch of has-beens. Gordon Brown is no spring chicken. I think part of this is they're not necessarily trying to be deliberately harsh to Gordon Brown, Harriet Harman, but they think, given the scale of what they've seen, this is basically not enough. And I had a minister as well that was saying, I get it, these are good, trusted politicians, but do we need to keep revisiting the past? We did that with Tim Allen, Peter Mandelson and so on. And this minister says that, they need to see policies now. So that's what we're expecting. At some point, we've got the King's speech next Wednesday. We've got this massive speech from the Prime Minister on Monday. What is he possibly going to do to rally all these different factions in his party together? It is hard to stress how important that speech is. He might not be known, for his rhetorical prowess, but he's going to have to deliver something.
Yeah, there's a lot riding on that, and that's to put it lightly, isn't it? I mean, has he got form in delivering these? The one that springs to mind is when that guy got on the stage at the conference and he was covered in glitter. And he did sort of roll with it, and he came out of that looking a bit more human, arguably. So
yeah, some of his conference speeches have, and the one after the Hartlepool by-election, I mean, that was a moment when he thought about resigning.
Right.
And he did that speech, you guys will remember, he's talking about his dad being a tool maker,
Yes.
he opened up. That was seen as the moment that he kind of managed to hold on to the leadership. But, has he got enough left in the tank to do this again with everything that's going on? We should also talk about Catherine West, who I mentioned in my piece.
Yes.
This is the MP that has said that if the Cabinet don't do something, she's going to go over the top. Has she got the numbers? I mean, this could be, we've got this kind of gentle Jenga tower. Could this be the piece that gets taken out that means the whole thing unravels? A lot of people at home watching might not have heard of Catherine West, but she, if she does get the backing of 80 MPs, and a lot of MPs are unhappy, more than 20 people have come out saying they think he should go. If she does get the backing, that does start the process of a leadership race.
Yeah. Will he hang on in there, though, regardless, do you think?
I get the sense he would try and fight it. I don't think he'd just, accept it and bow out. I think it would be more like... I think he would be more like an unsuccessful John Major.
Right.
It's like back me or sack me type moment. And I think Labour MPs will probably go with the latter.
Ava?
Who is Edwina Currie in this scenario?
No, let's not do that.
I think that...
Hang on. There is no Edwina Currie in this scenario. Let's just be absolutely clear on that.
Following through on the analogy.
No. That doesn't hold. The analogy does not hold. Anyway.
Sorry. I think that, with Starmer, if you trace his political career, particularly since the days of the shadow cabinet with Corbyn, the goal has been entwined with Morgan McSweeney and then a couple of other people working within Labour together. The goal has always been to be leader of the Labour Party. The goal has not been to be an effective constituency MP. It has been to be at the top of the pyramid. I don't think it interests Starmer to take a step back for party and say, actually, perhaps I'm not the right person to be leading
and
this.
do a job on the foreign stage, as Catherine West seems to suggest he should get, a bit like when Cameron was brought back in as Foreign Secretary.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that he would prefer to stay where he is. I mean, as aforementioned as well, he's given an interview to The Observer today, which is, where he says, I'm going to be Prime Minister for 10 years. I think it's clearly not in his vision that he is going to stand down. But the difficulty now is because you've got Morgan McSweeney out of the fold, I don't think you're going to be able to get a caucus or a cohort of the right of the Labour Party together to topple him in a leadership challenge. I think they're sort of running around like headless chickens, thinking, actually, we can't get ourselves together to topple him because is Wes Streeting even ready? There's no one there coordinating that effort. So unless it comes from the soft left, I don't think it's going to happen at all.
Headless chickens and spring chickens. We've just got chickens everywhere, haven't we, at the moment, Ali? But I mean...
And no salmonella, because there's no Edwina Currie.
Eggs and chickens. Who have thought it?
Too late for this.
Ali, though, back to you, whether Gordon Brown can be considered a spring chicken or not. I suspect not. I think he is in his 70s, I'm going to say, so definitely not. But look, whether he is popular or not, it is a serious throwback to the politics of 2 decades ago.
Yeah, that's right. And, Minister's saying to me, we can't look back to the past, we need to look to the future. And, there's people we were listing, Tim Allen, Peter Mandelson. Where is the freshness? I think something the Prime Minister might be talking about is Europe. I think he thinks that's something that might chime with the younger generation, perhaps, and maybe some clear blue water heading into the next election on Europe. They've ruled out rejoining the customs union. People like Sadiq Khan have talked about rejoining the EU altogether. So is he going to be able to please people with that? Just quickly on Catherine West, some people are saying that Wes backers will push this over the line.
Wes Streeting, yeah.
Wes Streeting backers. Allies that I've spoken to this evening saying that he doesn't know her, hasn't spoken to her for years, describing her as a Corbynista. So I think, we're going to start to hear these kind of briefings as well coming out. But I think it would potentially suit Wes Streeting and Angela Rayner if this sort of stalking horse figure did appear. But obviously it doesn't suit Andy Burnham, does it? Because he's got a few steps if he wants to get back.
Plenty of steps, yeah. He's got to get...
Marathon, I think.
A real marathon, yeah.
Exactly,
yes, absolutely. In terms of the substance of this speech tomorrow, and of course we've got the King's speech coming up as well, Christian, what else could be in there? I think the front of tomorrow's Mirror talks about help for energy bills. Ali's already talked about closer ties or better relationship with Europe, and Starmer's starting that in terms of this defence deal defence loan rather, to support Ukraine. That's already in motion. What else could you expect to see?
I think the issue is that a leopard can't change its spots, right? We saw this with every Prime Minister who gets elected for a certain attribute tends to then leave office because that attribute has become a negative. And you can trace that all the way through. Thatcher was headstrong and obstinate, got her in, that's what lost her. Boris was colourful, got it in, that's why he left office. Starmer is not an ideas man, he's not ideological, he's not particularly thoughtful or interesting. So the issue for him is going to be...
What about his bad points?
He's got a good hairline, I'll give him that. But the issue for him is going to be that all the things we're hearing floated about this speech just sound like things he's doing already, but a bit stronger rhetoric and maybe £1 billion a bit further. It's not the seismic moment, right? I think when we're talking about the sort of things that would be needed to turn this around and really grab the agenda, you're not talking about even closer relations with Europe. You're talking about, I'm tearing up the manifesto pledge, we're going back into the customs union, we're going to talk about rejoining, we may have another referendum. It's things like, you know, actually, we're living in multi-party politics, first past the post isn't serving anyone, let's have a referendum on proportional representation. I mean, really, like, unimaginable things.
Yeah.
But I don't believe for a second that Keir Starmer is the sort of carefree, abandoned man to do that sort of politics. And unfortunately, that's what's necessary now to turn the ship around for Labour.
Could you see him nuclear options without, obviously, the actual nuclear option?
Well, can I give you a hypothetical?
Yes, please.
What could have happened today? Gordon Brown met with Rachel Reeves and he's got a more abstract view of debt to spend, and he might be in the Treasury as we speak, working out how can we spend more money, how can we find more money, let's change the rules, let's make this fantastic speech on Monday where we say, look, actually, we're going to be able to build loads and we're going to provide you all with social housing again. But I don't know if it will pan out like that, because Starmer is more of a quote-unquote pragmatist. I think he's more cautionary. I think that probably what will happen is he'll give us a sort of more run-of-the-mill speech that will heavily focus on foreign policy, and we'll talk about Donald Trump a lot on the Strait of Hormuz and cost of living crisis, and they'll reiterate some of the spending that they've already done. And then perhaps in a couple of weeks' time, we'll see more of those Gordon Brown policies sort of begin to creep through.
OK. Ali, thanks for the moment. Scottish First Minister John Swinney says the people of Scotland must have a choice about their future. The Scottish Parliament now has more pro-independence MSPs than at any point, although the SNP have failed to secure a majority. Our Scotland correspondent Conor Gillis has this.
This is what the SNP wanted. A party standing at the summit of Scottish politics.
A lovely sunny day, me, and I didn't get an ice cream.
John Swinney, flavour of the month, set to become First Minister once again.
SNP!
But no majority he hoped for. Absolute control has slipped away.
I've gone to the public and said, trust me to be your First Minister, and they've said yes.
And validation arrived early from the White House. President Trump on Swinney's big victory, calling him a good man.
You didn't get that majority that you wanted. Surely that means that immediate day one talks that you had suggested before for independence are now off the table.
Obviously, I set out a means of breaking the logjam because Scottish politics has been stuck because of the intransigence of the UK government. The people of Scotland must be able to have a choice about their future, and I intend to make sure that happens.
To lead, Swinney needs friends. The pro-independence Greens are kingmakers once again. But the scars of the last Parliament, where they were booted from government, run deep. With the success of the SNP and the Greens combined, are we more likely to see an independence referendum in the next 5 years?
Probably not. Together, the SNP and the Greens trying to keep the issue alive, but ultimately the decision over an independence referendum rests with the UK Parliament and the UK government, and I don't see anything in this result shifting their position on that.
Meanwhile, Reform has arrived from 0 to second place in a single night, the same number of seats as Labour. So will they poach a Tory to push their opponents into third?
We haven't had any eye on that at all. We're very happy with the 17 that we've got. And this is only the start of it for us. We're only in now with another 5 years till the next election. We're already thinking about 2031. We're thinking about the council elections next year.
For all the victory laps so far from Scotland's political parties, there is an absence on the scene. A deafening silence from Labour, dealing with a hangover for all the wrong reasons. The Prime Minister writing to his Scottish candidates, talking about how it's time to reflect. But many here say that reflection should be done in Downing Street.
I don't think it's relevant here, though, Keir Starmer. I think, it doesn't really factor into my thoughts on Labour here. I think that's probably why SNP are so prevalent.
I was disappointed the SNP didn't get the majority, but I'm glad they're still the major party.
The constitutional question appears for now to be stuck in neutral. The SNP will open talks with all parties, bar Reform and Nigel Farage. He is only just getting started. Conor Gillis, Sky News in Edinburgh.
And Ava, they're going to have to start those talks because, I mean, they lost a couple of MPs. They were hoping, John Swinney was hoping, against the difficulty of the Scottish electoral system, to have a majority to then force through this discussion about a next independence referendum, but didn't get that. So life is a bit more difficult for him.
Well, it's not really up to him, is it? That's the problem. You know, he can promise the electorate that he's going to push for a referendum, but it doesn't mean he's going to be granted one.
But a majority would have given him more of a mandate, I guess, to be arguing for that.
No, absolutely, it would have done. But I think, that, again, sorry, not to repeat myself, but, you know, I completely agree with you. However, it's not in his gift to really offer it because it's not really up to him at the end of the day. But, you know, I think the SNP have done incredibly well considering the sort of the scourge of the SNP over the last couple of years, you know, being dragged through court, several other instances that haven't painted them in a particularly favourable light. So to come out winning again is actually rather impressive. It also speaks to more progressive politics. You know, you look at Anna Sarwar and Labour were really struggling during that election campaign because what they were pitching for was very different to what was being projected by Westminster. Westminster obviously taking a more sort of centre-right approach compared to Anna Sarwar in Scotland. Again, you know, a theme of the night, really, and the theme of these local elections is Labour HQ should really be questioning, should they be veering to the right when actually progressive politics has won in both Wales and Scotland?
That is a very interesting point, isn't it? Because it looks like they're runners-up, joint runners-up with Reform in Scotland. I think more to the thanks to the regional voting rather than the initial flurry of results. It makes you wonder whether Anna Sarwar's original approach, did it work in the end or not? No?
It wasn't in his gift. It wasn't. I think had the Scottish elections coincided within 6 months of the general election, then Anna Sarwar would have been First Minister. But again, as I said earlier about Wales, it was a completely obvious outcome after, I think the moment really was winter fuel, right? That's what just tanked all of the regional Labour hopes and dreams because it was so unpopular, and Westminster sets the tone by which all of the people vote, and the SNP are clearly still the beneficiaries of it. I mean, maybe there's an argument, I think, that the fact the SNP is still so dominant in Scotland, despite, again, like Welsh Labour, as I was condemning their performance earlier, the education league tables and the justice system is a disgrace in Scotland, and some of the other zanier social policies. The fact that they're still doing well, I think, just points to the fact that devolution is not working properly. But that's an argument for it.
Some of us think those progressive policies are fantastic, and some people voted for them, as you have seen in the last election.
But Reform, clearly their worst performance was in Scotland. They came, I think, third in their main constituency target on the border. And I think they fell short of another list seat by something silly, a few dozen votes or something. So they're clearly behind, and I think there's a lot of tactical voting. The fact that Greens didn't stand in a lot of the constituencies also massively helped the SNP. There was a sort of unofficial
But can I stay on Reform for a moment as well? Because I would say once Reform win, whether that be a by-election, I mean, looking back at Hamilton, once they win, that's when you can see them as a mainstream party, a party that could possibly be a party of government. But at this point in time, it's quite clearly more of an English fringe party that picks up at local elections rather than at national level. I also just quickly would say as well, Anna Sarwar, if he had launched that attack on Keir Starmer closer to these Scottish elections, you know, when he stood up and he said, perhaps you're not the Prime Minister that we should have, if he'd done it closer, I do think he would have picked up more votes.
Well, that's what they think. Coming up here on The Wrap, Brits on board the hantavirus-stricken cruise ship will be asked to isolate for 45 days when they return home. More on that in a moment.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news.
Being a Sky News presenter.
I began by asking,
thank you so much,
trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story? I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be allowed to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist...
Hi, darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
...is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more.
Well, let's kick off and make a statement.
What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs?
He's coming out! What more do you need?
Now, British nationals aboard the hantavirus-stricken cruise ship are going to be sent to Arrow Park Hospital, which is in the Wirral, and asked to isolate for 45 days when they return home. 22 Brits are on the ship, making its way now to the Canary Islands. Sky's Sadia Chowdhury reports from Tenerife.
Enormous preparation for somewhat unwelcomed visitors. Port Granadilla is readying for the arrival of the virus-stricken MV Hondius. It's due in the early hours of Sunday morning, now ahead of schedule.
The preparations are in full swing here at the port in anticipation of the ship's arrival. Once the passengers disembark, it has to be really quick. Get them onto buses and straight to the airport.
It's a 10-minute journey without traffic lights or traffic jams. Expect that same speed once at the airport, where cruise ship passengers should skip passport control and head straight to their aircraft. The World Health Organization boss has arrived, and with this message. I know you are worried. I know that when you hear the word outbreak and watch a ship sail towards your shores, memories surface that none of us have fully put to rest. The pain of 2020 is still real, and I do not dismiss it for a single moment. But I need you to hear me clearly. This is not another COVID.
You keep saying it's nothing like COVID, but isn't your presence here suggesting otherwise, seeing your face on media briefings every day?
It doesn't show that it's because people are concerned, so I have to be with them, while knowing full well that the risk is very low. But when people are concerned, then I have to take it seriously, and I have to be with them to repeat the same message and to support so the operation is successful.
And is there a risk that in 45 days' time, both of you are going to regret not keeping this on the ship, but instead allowing passengers to come onto Spanish soil and then go all over the world and expect themselves to self-isolate? Isn't there a risk you'll regret this?
As we have said again, based on the assessment, what you're saying is not going to happen.
Here is where the cruise passengers' Spanish adventure is set to end. This, the country that stepped up when few others were willing. Sadia Chowdhury, Sky News in the Canary Islands.
It is time now to see what is making the front pages of tomorrow's papers. Ava and Christian still with me here in the studio. Why don't we start, Christian, with the front of the Sunday Times. Picture, well, no, do you know what? Why don't we start with the Mirror? Actually, let me read you through the top pages, because the embattled Prime Minister Keir Starmer has pledged to slash energy bills in an attempt to turn around Labour's fortunes after his local election nightmare. That is on the front page of the Mirror. The Mail on Sunday claims Andy Burnham is moving closer to Downing Street after one of the Prime Minister's own senior MPs said he's losing the plot because of the threat to his leadership. Former Labour minister has given an ultimatum to the Cabinet to challenge the PM's leadership on Monday, or she will do it herself. That's the Telegraph. There it is. The Backbench Rebellion is also on the front page of the Sunday Times. The Star has Keir Starmer being mocked for trying to save his leadership by bringing in former Prime Minister Gordon Brown, as we've been discussing. Nigel Farage is boasting in the Express that Reform UK has supplanted Labour as the party of working people. The Observer features a picture of Christopher Harborne. If you don't know who he is, he's the crypto billionaire who lives in Thailand, who gave £5 million to Nigel Farage for his security. On the front of The People, celebrities and campaigners have united in anger as the government cancels plans to ban animal trophy killings. As I said, Ava and Christian with me. Let's look at the front page of the Sunday Times then. Christian, Starmer's SOS to Brown as the backbench rebellion grows, they say.
Yes, so the bulk of this is reiterating the story as we know it, bringing in Gordon Brown and Harriet Harman and Catherine West. There's a couple of things I think that are worth picking up on. One is several MPs on Labour's soft left reacting furiously to West's intervention because it will preclude Andy Burnham from making a return. The other one is an utterly eyebrow-raising quote, which is one senior Labour source said the return of Brown was the biggest Labour comeback since Mandelson. Why are Labour sources still mentioning Peter Mandelson, for goodness sake? And the third thing is, you sort of have to guess at this, but they're talking about the speech on Monday, which they say will include some fresh policy and a renewed pledge to seek closer relations with, and I presume it goes on to say, the EU. Now, it doesn't bode well. If there's just a renewing of a pledge, that sounds quite Starmerish, right? That's very underwhelming.
It could potentially fall rather flat, couldn't it? I think that there has been some murmurings that perhaps he's going to pledge freedom of movement for young people in the UK, which has actually been something that Sadiq Khan's been pushing for quite some time.
Yeah.
I also am not entirely sure that's in his gift to give. It would have to be negotiated with the EU, so I don't think he can actually promise that early on Monday morning.
Haven't they tried that before as well and didn't quite pull it off? There was talk about freedom of movement, wasn't there?
Yeah, well, the Erasmus scheme has come back, which is sort of like, I think, was the sort of the bottom rung of what they would have liked to have given to young people. Obviously, with Schengen, like, you know, the EU are protecting that, like it's sort of like, I don't know, surely there's a Lord of the Rings analogy in this somewhere. What do they want to do? Protect the ring? That's what the freedom of movement is?
Really genuinely is something you think I know Lord of the Rings.
But, you know, that's really sort of that they know that that's what the UK would want. They're not going to give that away willingly. Negotiations with the EU also seem to be at an all-time low. You know, they're coming to us saying if you want to stay within the single market, you're going to have to pay £1 billion in order to stay a part of this, you know, frictionless trade that we currently have with them.
Which is money from where? I don't know.
Well, absolutely. So, you know, these are potentially promises or pledges or platitudes that can't be fulfilled.
Let's shift to The Observer, and there's a picture, a rather striking one, on there of the man, they say, who bought Britain. It is Christopher Harborne, who has funded the Brexit Party, given quite a lot to reform as well, including £5 million in the pocket of Nigel Farage, they say, and bankrolled reform to become a national party. He lives in Thailand. I think, Ava, he has a Thai name as well as Christopher Harborne. But this, let's call it a gift, because I think that's what Nigel Farage and Reform are calling it, this gift of £5 million, the questions around it are not going away.
Yeah, this is Chakrit Sakankrit, who is a Thai national, has been residing there since 2011.
Yeah.
Just before the 2024 election, where Nigel Farage stood for Clacton, he received a quote-unquote gift from Christopher Harborne amounting to £5 million that was not initially declared because, well, Farage's argument that we've heard over the last couple of days is that he wasn't currently a Member of Parliament, so he didn't have to declare it. But more and more questions have begun arising and amounting to Farage. I think Sky's really sort of been quite at the forefront in the line of questioning to the leader of Reform on this issue, because it does seem rather unanswered. And now that the local elections are over, I think there will be further introspection or inspection over Nigel Farage and what he did and didn't do and whether it was above board. But as, you know, Calgary, you pointed out earlier, this could be disastrous for Farage because this could lead to potentially, if he has done anything wrong, this could lead to potential suspension from the House of Commons that could inevitably lead to a by-election.
Inside, Christian, inside The Observer, they've got that list of donations that Christopher Harborne has made because he donated to the Conservatives in the past as well.
Yes, so if you look through the list, he gave 1.8 million to the Tories from 2001 onwards, and then £10 million to the Brexit Party in 2019, £1 million to Boris, 5 million to Nigel, 9 million to Reform in 2025, 3 million to Reform in 2026, and then the private gift to Nigel Farage for the security. Now, Reform and are absolutely insistent, the quote to read the spokesman, "We have complied with all relevant rules and regulations." Bernard Jenkin, who sat on the Privileges Committee that investigated Boris Johnson over Partygate, says, as told The Observer, if he received such a donation during the 12 months before he was elected and it was in any way connected with his plans to stand for Parliament, then it would be declarable. So clearly, that's the head of the pin that we're going to be dancing on on this debate, right? Now, Reform clearly are insistent there were no issues, in which case I see no issue for them to be fearful of an investigation. And clearly there is going to be an investigation, maybe two, one from the Parliamentary Standards Body and one from the Electoral Commission. That needs to run its course. The other thing I think is worth saying, maybe Nigel Farage has made a massive error in judgment. But at the same time, I don't think he would necessarily fear a by-election in Clacton. I don't think it's career over, actually. I think it could... It could work in his favour.
You mean if he was punished by being suspended?
If he were punished to being suspended, and I mean, he may not even break the threshold. We don't need to exercise the whole process here, and there's a lot of if, buts, and maybes. But this is clearly not going away, and I think that Nigel Farage is a very, very accomplished media performer, but he did not deal very well with the line of questioning from Beth Rigby earlier, and he pulled out of Laura Kuenssberg. And this is going to run and run and run. Now Parliament is reconvening on Wednesday, and he needs to be able to answer all the questions.
And would he even care? Would he even care if he wasn't in Parliament? Could he do more work outside of the constraints of having to work by the parliamentary schedule?
Interesting point, because he said he didn't want to run for Clacton, and then he changed his mind. And who knows? Look, it's not going to go away. We do have to for a moment, because we've got an outbreak coming up. But in a moment, we'll have much more from tomorrow's papers.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
Let's carry on looking through tomorrow's papers with Christian and Ava, who are still with me. Let's get back to the Telegraph, Ava. Beneath all the politics, they've got this story saying self-diagnosed dyslexics are allowed to jump the queue at the airport. They're in a bit of a tiz about that. What's the story?
Well, I mean, I don't want to advertise it too much by revealing too much of the story, but, you know, a number of people are wearing sunflower lanyards now, and this is a system that essentially allows you to skip queues or to seek help in a public space if you need it. And then people are allegedly self-diagnosing online on social media for autism and dyslexia, ADHD, wearing these lanyards, and they're skipping queues at airports and winding everyone up. But, you know, I mean, I see this all the time on my own personal TikTok, but on my feed, I see all the time, you know, are you ADHD? They give sort of a rather a wide-ranging definition of ADHD, which probably encompasses actually most normal people, most people without any sort of neurodivergence. And people are taking that as read and self-diagnosing.
Yeah. I think the labelling of behaviours inevitably leads to more people saying they believe they have said behaviours. Do you think?
Yeah, I do think we live in an over-diagnosed society, combined with a culture, especially post-COVID, of people feeling very, very entitled to free things that then ruin things for those who genuinely need it. And I think, unfortunately, this is exactly the sort of behaviour that undermines. You know, when I talk about things like welfare claiming and this sort of behaviour, there's part of it which is genuinely, I feel sorry for people who deserve the sort of, not perks, obviously, that's the wrong way to do it.
People with Crohn's
sort of
disease here who can't get to the front of the
100%.
queue,
And because everyone then will become very, very sceptical about the lanyards, and it then undermines it for those genuinely in need. Although I really can't see why they need access to sort of the lounges, you know, offering free champagne and beer because you've got ADHD. But I think I could probably get a Motability car.
Okay.
I really do. Like, I think based on my own... you know, I'm a journalist. I've got ADHD. Of course I've got ADHD, and we've got anxiety. Everyone has anxiety. I've got a dodgy knee as well. So what? I reckon I could if I put in a bit of effort.
Okay.
And I just think it's ludicrous. I think, you know, the system needs reorientating as they're actually in need, and really crack down on people taking unfair advantage.
Sounds like you've got the makings of a story there if you try and get that Motability car. The front page of the Sunday Times, GPs must share data on patients with NHS. Christian, do you want to just quickly bring us up to speed on that one? We have a minute.
Yes, GPs and hospitals will be forced to share patient data with each other in a push to join up the NHS. And I think the subsequent thing to say about that is it is astonishing, but so typical of the British state that such an obvious thing is not already done. I mean, I really...
Perhaps tried and failed many times over.
I can't believe that my GP doesn't share this data with the NHS. And, you know, if they get it over the line, I mean, it's a £10 billion digitisation, so you'd hope it makes some sort of impact.
We've all been down the hospital, haven't we? Been like, you know, I've just been at the GP and explained it to them, and it's not carried over.
But very quickly, people have that nervousness about data sharing, don't they? Nervousness about big American tech companies getting involved in our health data,
I would never advocate for, Silicon Valley tech company to hold that data. That is the big question. What cloud holds this data, and are you able to hack it? The NHS hasn't been immune to hacking before, so it would make people nervous.
Thank you both very much indeed. Been a real pleasure to have you with me here this evening on The Wrap. Ava and Christian, brilliant stuff. Coming up, how England's Red Roses edge closer to another Women's Six Nations Grand Slam.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling.
It's not his country, it's ours.
Sky News, the full story first, free wherever you get your news. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts watching us live.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
There seems to be some sort of a shooting, what appear to be shots fired at the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
It was a jam-packed interview. I'll tell you what he told me, and I'll explain why you can't hear the call.
100 days in and back with the grassroots of this MAGA movement.
It feels a little bit like he's a king, not a president.
He is a king.
I've witnessed the remarkable passion for politics here, but the anger too.
These immigration rates?
Unbelievable we've come to this.
I'm observing what you're doing.
This post of Trump, it's a big shift. It's very positive.
Have you seen what Donald Trump's been up to in the Rose Garden, in the East Wing?
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist. A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now? What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking,
Thank you so much.
trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story? I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They will be allowed to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
Time for the latest sport now from Roger.
James, can you do a big clap in front of your face? Perfect. OK, mate, in your own time.
One word to describe James Milner.
Legend.
Unique. Consistent.
Dedicated.
Intense.
Brilliant.
He just loves to win.
I think he's everything you'd want to be in a footballer.
The Premier League loves James Milner.
Hi James, congratulations on breaking the all-time Premier League appearance record and how hard it is to keep going. You've done phenomenal, so well done.
To be appreciated by your teammates and appreciate what you give, that's pretty special.
England's future looks healthy, and here at Leeds United's training ground, they reckon they're once again grooming tomorrow's World Cup stars.
The board now are realising that you've got to have your money in your academy, you've got to believe in it, because the spiralling costs of everything within the game, I think you've got to try and bring people through that you've blooded yourself.
Yeah, it was an amazing time being in the academy, and then you've seen the likes of those guys come through. I remember Alan Smith scoring his first touch at Electoral. He was my hero. From being really young and going with my family, and as a Leeds fan, you know, it was a dream really being at the club and being in the academy of a team you supported.
James had a mentality that you would associate with an older, good professional.
Lucky enough to sign the old YTS
back then at Leeds, and then we ended up sharing a room together. It was only Phil's and Orsie's, and then I think it was on the old PlayStation. We had a snooker game and we were obviously competitive and trying to get 147.
It was a training session basically, and this young lad got called in, and straight away you're all having a look at him, you know, what's he like, whose team's he going to be on. I would say 10 minutes into him coming over from, I think it might have been under 12s then, how old was he? He's only like 16, wasn't he? He did this one thing straight away and everyone straight away went, oh, who's this lad here?
Young James Milner's only 16.
Didn't think I was going to get on, and to be fair, Terry gave me the nod to go on. Lee Bowyer passed me a ball with my back to goal, and I tried to pass it back and passed it to Paolo Di Canio, and he put it over the bar, thank God. And just remember Bo afterwards asking, did I have a bet on 4-all? I can't remember too much about being nervous playing against other Premier League players, because for me Leeds were an amazing team, and seeing Wayne Rooney doing what he was doing at that time, that obviously showed you again it was possible and someone else was doing it, and made you even more eager to go and train really well and take your chance when you got it on the pitch.
Goal for Leeds, and it's the youngster James Milner.
He's travelled a long way to get in the 6-yard box to finish that off, and I think that is typical of the type of player he is.
No, we're there to put the boots out. We're there to pick the drinks up, you know, go get the slips for the first team lads, and pick things up off the floor. And he got the shout that he was on the bench.
He was so strong in his own mind about what he wanted to achieve, what he did in the game. When he was playing games, he knew what his job was, and he got on with it.
Next thing you know, he's on the pitch and sitting Marcel Desailly on the floor.
Goodness me, he has done it again. James Milner's the name. We were just obviously absolutely buzzing for him to score that and to be 16, and which was obviously huge.
It wasn't so long ago that the Leeds-born lad was strutting his stuff on his school playing fields. Now he's on an altogether bigger stage.
What I like about him is the awareness of other players, like Beckham.
They're young, gifted, and in a short space of time, James Milner and Wayne Rooney have seen themselves elevated to hero status.
When you talk about Wayne Rooney, you're talking about one of the best players that have ever played. But I put James right up there.
Pretty much blew up, you know, obviously in the papers, and people ringing the house wanting to represent you, and I think people turned up at the local cricket club we used to go to all the time and asked where I lived, and people said we'd never heard of him and lied and things like that. I was in a school hall doing my GCSEs like 5 months before that, and all your mates go to watch Leeds, and then you're playing on the pitch and scoring goals in front of them.
He was dubbed the new Wayne Rooney. Now Leeds youngster James Milner finds himself at
Thank you, Roger. Let's take a look now at the weather.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
Tomorrow looks mostly fine, but next week will be rather changeable. It's going to turn cooler too, with the risk of some frosty nights.